As much as I love English literature, as much as I love reading, I won't feel satisfied. And then I discovered liberal arts.
It would have been difficult probably for me to choose liberal arts because I think that is a deeper question about my own trajectory.
If you could go back with all the information right now to your bachelor's level and have a choice between doing a liberal arts degree versus what you initially did.
Thought-provoking insights sparking intellectual curiosity. Tune in, transcend the ordinary, and get nuanced.
Hi everybody. Today we are going to talk about the concept of choice in liberal arts. In some sense, this is still a very novel idea, the whole idea that we have so much choice within the domain of liberal arts and how that is so essential to defining liberal arts in itself. I'm Ravi. I teach philosophy and literature at the Alliance School of Liberal Arts, and with me I have Jasmine. She's majoring in literature and political science. She's in her second year. So, Jasmine, I thought we could start from the very beginning. One of the things that we are, when we talk about liberal arts, the very concept of liberty, freedom, that brings with it the burden of choice, right? Freedom is not for the weak-hearted, right? Some people don't want freedom, right? They want that everything should be dictated to them. And in liberal arts, we are trying to invert that and put a lot of the burden of choice on the student, as we've been seeing. And I think we should start from the very beginning, shall we say, that even before you choose majors, you choose minors, to get into that whole business, we might ask the question, what has gone into making us who we are before we make a choice, right? So maybe you can start with what you were discussing with me, like how your childhood experiences, your schooling was primed to orient you towards the arts in the broad sense before we then tackle the more difficult question of what choices came to be.
So I would start off by saying that I was brought up in a very nature-filled area, much like our campus, in a very small town in Himachal. So immediately, the idea of arts is brought into nature because you're surrounded by nature, you're reflecting a lot, you're spending a lot of quality time with yourself. And then I had a lot of influence by my family because they are very thought-provoking people themselves. But unlike my course here, which is liberal arts, I was a science student for my +1 and +2, which is a little contradictory, but at the same time, it's the story of a lot of students in India. And I think that choice happens because it's a predetermined choice by society given to us, where we feel like this is the highest success rate and this is what we should adapt into. But the real shift happens when you start asking questions to yourself, such as, oh, am I content with what I'm going to be doing for a very long time in my life? Who am I as a person myself? And that larger philosophical question of discovering yourself and so on. And arts really helped me to define that. So I would say even choosing liberal arts was, yes, it seems like a big deal, but almost something that was bound to happen in my life. In fact, I had this interaction here as well with one of our professors, where I said that I didn't know what to choose, so I chose liberal arts. And he said to me in reply, at least you chose liberal arts. So I think that really brought in me some level of personality, I would say, in association with my degree, which I think is really important for the student.
Yeah, in fact, that's an interesting idea. You should choose liberal arts if you don't know what to choose, because then you're going to get into liberal arts, and liberal arts will force you to choose something.
Yeah, pretty
right?
much.
Coming back to the point that you made, that we go through all these experiences which actually shape us and prime us for the choices that we make. But then the question still remains, because in India, the arts are typically not having that kind of a, if you like, a cultural preference, right? In that hierarchy with, it's this engineering and the medical, which have all this fanfare around them, right? The pictures of people who clear engineering entrances are, pasted all over the newspapers and stuff. You don't see that happening for the great art students, right? So, in that scenario, how did you make the connection from your broad interest in arts to what you are calling as liberal arts? So if you could maybe Tell us something about that.
Like cover the idea of the cultural hierarchy that we have in our society, at least, I would like to say that we get like displays of the engineers and the doctors who scored really well and did really well, but at the end of the day, our country is ruled by the arts major, and most domains, most sectors are for example, even an engineering department would require a content writer, for example, or an English degree major, for example. So there is that. So we're very heavily infiltrated in our culture and in our society. And to cover the shift from arts to liberal arts is the realization where you realize that even your sciences are arts, and liberal arts cover that. I think there's this common misconception that liberal arts is just humanities as subjects, but no, mathematics, statistics, economics, all of these independent domains are also liberal arts. And what makes them liberal is the fact that they can stand alone and sustain themselves within the society and provide something back to society. So having people get into that, for example, with our batch and people pursuing certain fields like this, is no longer about the job that they can attain moving forward, but it's so that they have found out something in society that they can benefit from and give back to. So most math majors that I've met over here, um, they are extremely interested in the philosophy of maths, like how did it come about, what are the theorems about, and so on. And that really cultivates not just the domain, but the person and the society overall. So I feel like, engineers and doctors are part of the society, but liberal arts build it. So yeah.
And you were telling me about how you heard about the specific tag of liberal arts from the American context. You want to just tell us more
Yeah.
about that?
So I think it is a little it's a bit hypocritical in a society where every normal household wants their child to go to Oxford and Harvard, but I don't think they realize those are liberal arts colleges. They're primarily liberal arts colleges, and one of the main reasons that is so is because it's not only student driven in many ways, but there's this level of consciousness amongst students. They're aware of what they're pursuing, they're aware of what they want to be, and even if they are not concise about an opportunity, an occupation per se, but they're they're in this zone of choosing and feeling like they have liberty to conduct a life according to their own terms.
All these places that we idealize, we actually don't realize that they are essentially liberal arts places and still are actually having an authority because of being liberal arts places, especially the likes of Oxford and Harvard, the so-called Ivy League, or however we want to call it. The reason they have this enduring legacy is really because of the great philosophers, political thinkers, the so-called people from the arts. Of course, right now, those are also places known for high-tech research. But that's been a phenomenon, I think, probably that's coming about since the last 80, 90 years, right? Before that, they were primarily hubs for the liberal arts, right? And I think that's very well put. You eventually chose English, right? Rather than asking you why you chose English, let me ask you, because I taught you art of argument, I always wanted you to probably do more philosophy, right? So why didn't you choose philosophy? Like, why did that happen? If I had to ask you, and despite so many of us wanting you to choose philosophy.
I would say, well, the first simple answer would be that I've grown up reading fiction, I've enjoyed reading and so on. And the natural choice for me always seemed like English literature. Uh, but I would also say that philosophy is a domain that I only really discovered as a domain when I came here. So, where I would say I was interested in it, at the same time, I had the choice to still attend those classes without having that on a grade certificate and without having that as my degree. So I could still be an English literature major and still attend my philosophy classes and shape myself. So perhaps moving forward, I could always do a master's in philosophy, and we never know what is about to happen. But that's a good part of being a liberal arts student. So
Yeah, that's true. And maybe you would want to, let us know about because you said that you're double majoring in English and political science, because we have been having these discussions. How do you think those two can really speak to each other? I mean, do you see that marriage happening, or you feel like you're completely two in two completely different worlds when you go to an English class as opposed to a political science class? Is that really true or not?
So I would say in the beginning it was definitely true when it was just an elective for me. So I was doing an English literature elective, and then I had a political science themed elective, and it felt like two different, very two different worlds. But luckily, I was blessed to have a faculty who was able to showcase to me that political science is beyond just what's latest in the news. It's about yeah, Dr. Julian, so one of our heads for political science faculty over here, and he introduced this whole concept of how texts are heavily involved in political science, and he himself is an avid reader and has grown up reading such really profound literature like Dostoevsky and so on.
And he does the film club and
Yeah,
all.
and he does film club as well. So there is this aspect, there's the stigma attached to political science where it's extremely vigorous, it's extremely related to cutthroat ideas. But I think the reason it intermingles is English literature and political science is the simple idea that English literature adds fluidity to what political science causes vigorosity to in our day-to-day lives. So when you're reading a newspaper, you would see that you are getting informed about what is happening in the world, but you're getting informed in such an articulate way, and that can happen through your English literature.
Yeah. In fact, do you remember this article I sent you the last week, where we were because political science, and when we talk about political science here, we mean it in the broadest sense. We even mean geopolitics. So we were reading this article which came in the print magazine, where there is this expert called Praveen Swami who has written an article where he says that uh, the whole episode that is playing out between India and Canada. Uh, it is about the killing of Nijjar, the Sikh, uh, Canadian Sikh individual. How Trudeau is framing it as what he calls a morality play. Now, if you think about it, that's a very elaborate analogy, right? Where you are trying to describe a scenario within international relations through a very arcane idea from the field of literature, right? So how did you respond to that? Like, I know you read that article, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So I would say that firstly, I felt like represented almost because in my political science papers, and Dr. Julian is very aware of that, I have this tendency to bring a lot of comparisons from the field of literature overall, be it from poems or prose and so on. So I felt like I was, that there's somebody out there who also sees the things that I do. And the second thing is that you learn twice more. You're not only learning the information that is being provided to you, that is the news at latest, but you're also getting to know this historical background, which makes you empathize more with the article in the first place. So you may or may not know the Sikh background, that the reference that he makes, but when you're going through the article, you get this feeling of relatability, like you're part of something that is larger, which is extremely important when it comes to journalism. You want to feel like you're part of something larger in
True,
society.
true. In fact, yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, another way of putting it would be, I think the complexity of international relations and politics, where you're dealing with so many actors, human beings, states, that is the kind of complexity even literature deals with, and so those two worlds can truly speak to each other, as we were realizing. But yeah, now, one of the things, I mean, like I said, uh, one factor is to look at choice and truly celebrate it. But there's the paradox of choice, is that too much choice leads you astray, right? And this is the thing that, even economists study it, that why do we even need 10 different choices for soap in the supermarket, right? And how that really can bamboozle you. So, what do you say to people who are saying that we don't want choice? We want a degree which is pre-designed for us, and that's the path we want to take. If that is the proposition some people make, how would you respond?
I would say that itself in itself is also a choice that they have made.
Yeah.
That I want to have this, pre-designed degree. I want like a set path given to me by society, and the fact that it in itself is a choice gives you the burden to let other people have vast number of choices. So if you are wanting to choose something that is already predestined, you cannot really have the opinion that other choices should be restrained because, well, you're admitting yourself into it. And secondly, when it comes to having a lot of choices or less choices and so on, I think that's a debate. It's going to keep going on. Sometimes you're going to have a lot, sometimes you're going to have a less. It becomes subjective as well. Like, if, for example, with the electives, some people may feel like we don't have enough media electives. Some people may feel like we don't have enough English literature electives. But at the end of the day, choices foster consciousness in you. They foster you to think, reflect, and then finally make a choice.
I have been debating this, and it's a dilemma which is a fair one, right? When we make these choices, why I talked about popularity is that of a certain choice over another is because there is obviously, if you like, pragmatic bets to be made that, okay, if a choice is popular, which means probably you're likely to get employed, and those constraints. Uh, while at the same time, my heart says that liberal arts is that field which is going to encourage a very crazy choice. And I'll tell you, for example, data science and politics. You can major in data science and politics. Actually, it's not so crazy looking at how, looking at how social media is being manipulated for political purposes. It's more intuitive, but even today, as a combination of two majors or a major and minor, that would still be counterintuitive. And I actually think that these are the ones which make sense. If I had to go through liberal arts today, I'll tell you, I'll choose maybe philosophy and mathematics, something like that, right? Or I might choose something like, I know people in the West who have chosen stuff like electrical engineering and music, right? So, how did you address that constraint? That, okay, you'll have some sense of going out in the world and saying that, okay, this is on my degree, versus the fact that you're just naturally drawn to something.
The idea of constraint, when it starts off with you have this preset desire that you are interested in so and so, and then you join a university, a program, and so on. That constraints is supposed to be flexible, and that's something we should just adapt as a society at this point, that your opinion, your wants, your needs are going to change as time goes by, which is why I feel like the only constraint really is the fact that you are going to get a degree. What is going to be on the degree is completely up to you. And that's why, like we've mentioned a couple of times earlier as well, that what makes it liberal, like why is it liberal arts in the first place, and why is it not conservative arts, let's say, is because it's open-minded like that, and it's allowing you to have a constraint according to your own limitations. So if my limitation is the idea that I do not see myself doing well in mathematics, perhaps I will not take mathematics. At the end of the day, you get like these conversations that are not just about passion of that student, but they're thought provoking, and they force them to almost think in a direction that they've never thought about before. So same thing happened with me in political science. Same thing happened with a student, like a friend of mine in your class, with philosophy and mathematics. So yeah, constraint is something liberal arts provides to you on your own limits.
True, and just to clarify before the computer science people corner me, those papers were philosophical with a lot of math content.
All right.
Right? So, I mean, if you remember, while I would come into the class, there was a lot of equations and stuff on the board.
Yeah.
So I was definitely doing maths, but yeah, because they were so foundational and had such a huge conceptual basis, my idea was to offer a course where because I was not sure about the problem solving aptitude of students, I thought I'll keep it more conceptual, and the trade off would be we'll solve lesser problems and math homework kind of problems.
Right.
So yeah, but I also wanted to give them something, so that would be the conceptual and the philosophical part. But yeah, I mean, that's well put. And yeah, I think we kind of pretty much deconstructed the concept of choice very well today. And, oh, it's so difficult. What would you say to, how did your parents react, for example? What was their opinion about?
So again, typical household, they thought that because I was good in my school time, I would become either a doctor or something like perhaps I would clear UPSC and so on. But I think like because I was not surrounded by art school at all, the idea of arts was definitely not in my household. But it's so contradictory because both of my parents are extremely individualistic in sense, and perhaps they don't realize how artsy they are just in the way they look at life and how self-reflective they are and so on. So I did drop out. I took a drop for an year after my 12th grade because I wanted to do a BA in English literature. But constantly I felt this urge that it's not going to be enough. As much as I love English literature, as much as I love reading, I won't feel satisfied. And then I discovered liberal arts and so on. And what really set apart this course structure for me compared to other course structures that are available in India at least was firstly that it's in Bangalore, and I was extremely excited to come here because it's a cosmopolitan area, it's connected to the city, and so on. And it's the hub of art and culture after Delhi, at least in my eyes. And for Delhi, I didn't have it in me. I couldn't see myself living there. I wanted to come here. And the secondly, it was definitely the course structure. I realized that this is what I've been wanting. I want a pathway, but I want a pathway with so many trees and plants to explore and so many other little tangents to go about. So that's how I came about liberal arts, I would say. But you should also mention how you end up teaching in liberal arts as somebody who was doing a bachelor's in,
Yeah,
the
maybe
sciences.
because I think one of the things I enjoy about teaching in liberal arts is the fact that I mean to mention it is that I restrict myself to the foundation year, right? Because I really like teaching classes where there are people from different majors put together. Like in your class on Great Ideas Across Ages, we had people from data science, philosophy, literature, and I had the freedom to take ideas from these disciplines. Like so, we took Alan Turing,
Yeah.
Freud, Marx. That kind of, the range of those ideas was bigger, right? Definitely that, and also the very fact that even art of argument, right? So, for example, uh, for critical thinking this time, for the also the art of argument, I been wanting to get into not just argument in terms of what mistakes people make, but I also want to give them a glimpse of how argument happens in mathematics. Like, for example, proving something. Like in school, when you prove a theorem, that's actually a very, very sophisticated and a very powerful way of arguing to prove something beyond doubt, right? QED, right? So I think that flexibility is something that I enjoy. So I think I was, meant to somehow, as you say, gravitate towards this. And luckily, we were also having a lot of freedom in designing the courses. So we had flexibility at that end, just like you have. And as you very well know from my classes, at least, that I also changed the courses and I ask you guys, okay, if you want to read something, we'll go for that text. I'm ready to sometimes, drop something that we have in the syllabus for something that a class asks because it's a small class and we can actually cater to people's interest like that. So yeah, it's been a great journey in that sense. But there are all those, like I said, managing. It's a lot of chaos, but it's a nice chaos, meaning with all these majors combining, people are confused sometimes, there's conflict and dilemma. But it's something that we truly embrace, right? So,
So would you say if you could go back with all the information right now to your bachelor's level and have a choice between doing a liberal arts degree versus what you initially did, would you say you would end up choosing liberal arts, or was your prior experiences really important for you to shape your choice, as we have discussed choice so much?
so it would have been difficult probably for me to choose liberal arts because I think that is a deeper question about my own trajectory in high school, where we were too much into maths and physics. And I actually, although I used to love reading a lot, for 2 years I stopped reading, right? So, but we're going to have that conversation about how liberal arts is asking us to reimagine not just the university, but projecting backwards, it's asking us to reimagine even school education, right? So that should be a conversation for the next time. But yeah, thanks, Jasmine. It was
Thank you.
wonderful, and yeah, hope to see you again.